What do you make of these plans then? Because it doesn't really seem to, I've got to say, from the outset, saying, well, we're going to cancel these degrees which don't seem to offer increased earning potential. Well, how do you even begin to work that out?
Actually, lots of people do work that out. There's an awful lot of analysis that goes on to look at those things. Look, we have some of the best universities in the world, and for huge numbers of young people, it's a great option to go into higher education. But there are obviously some degrees, some institutions which are not delivering well for those young people. And when you're asking people to take on significant amounts of financial liability, debt as a result of that degree, it's important that it's a really high quality degree. Earnings is part of it, but it's not the only part. There's lots of other aspects to look at about the quality of a degree to make sure it's really, really delivering for those young people.
Brett's been in touch. He makes a really good point, actually, which I'll put to you if you don't mind. He says, when it comes to education, I think it should all be free and funded and encouraged by government. By charging, you're putting a chokehold on access and growth. How can you reach your potential if you're not allowed the information you need to get there because you were born poor? I mean, this all stems down to the idea of trying to get more and more people to university, and therefore the government couldn't fund it. Should we be going back to a system where actually the government pays for it, but fewer people are going, based purely on meritocracy?
Well, I'm not sure that ever was based sort of purely on meritocracy. The truth is, in the old days, when there was no charge to go to university, far fewer people went, and a lot of people were therefore excluded from university. Actually, a result of the systems that came in, first of course under the Labour government, but then the big expansion, the big reforms under the coalition government, the result of that was that more people from lower income backgrounds were able to go to university, and I think that's a good thing. What this is talking about today, the announcement from Rishi Sunak on education, is doing a few things. First of all, making absolutely sure that the value proposition for young people going to university is a good one by making sure that courses are really high quality and are giving a great education. But it's also about people who don't go to university. It's about levelling up, if you like, getting equal prestige for technical and vocational education, which has huge potential in our country. And you hear Rishi talking about innovation, about science, about technology, all these things we can grasp in the future. They require really top-notch skills, and that's where technical and vocational education has a lot to add. And you mentioned in your introduction things like creating a Russell group of technical colleges, Regis professorships, making sure that the prestige absolutely is there, because these are different educational options for young people to go down, but they are of equal value, and we need to make sure that that is seen to be so.
Look, the one thing that strikes me with that is that, I mean, because I went to university in 1992 at the Nottingham Trent University, which up until the term I started was Nottingham Polytechnic, and which were effectively technical colleges, really, and so it was the Conservative government at the time that got rid of polytechnics and allowed them to become universities. Now it almost seems to be a reversal of that Rishi Sunak's proposing.
No, actually, Stephen, not at all. In many ways, it's part of that. It's part of that same philosophy, is to say that whatever choice you make about the type of subject you do, actually, there is. You deserve to have a really, really top quality delivery of that education, and we have fantastic education of all types actually in this country. But I think everybody recognises that often that higher education route, the university route, is what a lot of people think is the gold standard. But there's absolutely also a gold standard in technical and vocational education. We've had things like reforms of apprenticeships. We've got new T levels that are now really, really good qualification, age 16 to 18. And what Rishi wants to do is to take that further, to make sure we seize opportunities both at the individual level so that everybody can fulfill their potential in life, but also for our country, to make sure we've got the skills that we can compete effectively internationally. We can be a centre of excellence for these new industries. We can improve our productivity, and that's what creates jobs and growth.
Point you to the latest YouGov poll that we've just mentioned there in our opening sequence. 69% to Liz Truss, to Rishi Sunak's 31%. We do know that Tory party members generally vote early. I mean, is this race all but won now for Liz Truss? Can Rishi bring this back at all?
I don't know what's going on with these polls. I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, what I can tell you is that from what I hear, from speaking to party members, and I've spoken to a lot of party members, I mean, first of all, there's an awful lot of people have not made up their mind. And people know this is a really, really, really important decision. And they are taking their time. They're watching the hustings. They are listening to the candidates. They're seeking, if they can, to meet the candidates. And to hear more before casting their vote. And the second thing to say is, of the people I speak to who have made up their mind, I'm hearing from a lot more people who are saying they are going for Rishi than would be suggested by the polls. I don't know what's going on in these national polls. That's a question for other people. But actually, what this is about making the right decision. And I believe Rishi Sunak is the right choice for leadership in these difficult times. And many of us, and of course, he had more support among MPs than any other candidate every stage through the parliamentary stage. We're going to be continuing to make that case.
So, Damien, you say it's all still to play for. Of course, the most important thing is policy at this point. It's policy that's going to get those votes. But Rishi Sunak has criticised Liz Truss and her planned tax cuts. He's called them starry-eyed boosterism. She is going to do an emergency budget, she says, if she comes into office in September. Rishi Sunak hasn't made that pledge. I mean, some people would say Liz Truss at least is making action and trying to tackle the cost of living with an emergency budget. Nothing yet from Rishi Sunak.
Well, no, not at all. I mean, first of all, of course, we are partway through the delivery of the programme that Rishi Sunak spearheaded while he was at the Treasury for the targeted direct help coming through now, £1,200 for the most vulnerable households, proportion of that, a universal element of support. And he's been clear that more can be done. And of course, we have to be able to respond to the exact circumstances that we find come the autumn. But he has been clear that more help may be needed and can be forthcoming. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong to put out of the question having further direct help. I'm not sure it's right at all. In fact, I'm sure it isn't right at all to call that kind of help handouts. This is not about handouts. This is about a unique situation that we find ourselves in. Combination of COVID and Putin's aggression in Ukraine, and people are finding it extremely difficult to deal with that. And I think it is right that government is there to help, and that's exactly the kind of approach that Rishi took actually in COVID, made sure that it was possible to give direct help and to do it quickly in a targeted way. And that's his approach now again with the cost of living crisis.
You mentioned earlier on when we were talking about education, you mentioned the importance of levelling up and getting poorer students to higher education. Levelling up is still a key part of the agenda for the Conservatives, so we're told, for both candidates. So why then did Rishi Sunak say, Labour shoved money into deprived urban areas, and I'm reversing that, to great rounds of applause? That they're not the words of someone who's really looking to level up, are they?
Well, actually, I think the point is, and the point he was making, is that levelling up is a much more complex thing than talking about, say, a north-south divide. You get deprivation in all parts of the country. You certainly get deprivation and need in towns as well as cities. You get it in rural areas as well as built up areas. And if we're serious about levelling up, you've got to look at those coastal towns. You've got to look at those sparse areas of rural Britain, as well as in the big metropolitan areas. And actually, what Rishi has demonstrated, and what he's actually done as Chancellor, is to show that commitment to make sure that all parts of the country, town as well as city, rural as well as urban, that everybody has a crack at getting the the infrastructure investment, we were talking about education, the support on education, on skills building, everywhere has that opportunity. Move the Treasury campus to Darlington. I mean, I think is actually a pretty good example of that. Whereas many people would have thought if you were going to put a campus in the north, it might go perhaps to Leeds as the sort of metropolitan area. And of course, there is lots of government activity in Leeds, and rightly so. But it needs to be spread out, and we need to make sure that all parts of the country are included in this.